So it's the year 2010, and 16-year-old Ryan is trying to get sober from drugs and alcohol at a treatment center. And one of the programs they offered there was the 12-step programs that were derived from Alcoholics Anonymous. And I engaged with this 12-step process. Part of that is you get a sponsor, somebody who has been sober and is now sharing their sobriety in a way to keep their sobriety. So through self-emptying in Alcoholics Anonymous, you're able to stay sober because your life is no longer about you, and therefore you are fed spiritually and able to connect with God in a way that is meaningful, and that's what keeps you sober. And so in this 12-step process, one of the steps is taking a fearless moral inventory. That's step 4. And step 5 is sharing that with your sponsor, typically. And what that looks like is you write down all your resentments, all your fears, all your past moral failings, and look at your part in how life went wrong. In essence, as alcoholics and addicts, it's our tendency to always point the finger. It's someone else's fault why I'm not okay. And as part of addiction, you learn to be manipulative, you learn to be dishonest, you learn to let these things drive your life. And so in order to get sober, you have to purify yourself of all those past tendencies. And part of that is by thoroughly listing all of the things that you did that harmed others, or ways in which you thought that harmed others and yourself, and ways you continued to enable your own addiction. So at an early age, I was faced with a very difficult prospect. Be fearless and honest about everything, or be miserable and lose your sobriety. Because there's a dichotomy, and the dichotomy is if we're not willing to be thorough and fearless, we won't stay sober. So I was fortunate enough to be forced into a choice, and I did make the choice to be honest and courageous. And I said things that I wouldn't want everyone to know. I wouldn't want them to be posted on the bulletin board on the public square. But I said them anyway because I knew that my life was at stake. I count myself blessed that I had this early encounter with a type of confession. And those of you who are Orthodox Christians will understand well the importance of confession. Now, I know that Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't have the full sacramental weight of confession, but nonetheless, I think it is a type of confession in terms of a dim shadow of what confession is, and it's functional to the extent that when we surrender and stop trying to hold on to our dishonesty and self-centeredness, we heal. So when I went to my life confession last week as preparation for coming into the Orthodox Church, I had a previous encounter with the whole idea of being fearless and honest and courageous. Now, it wasn't easy, and I've done many things in my life that I'm not proud of, and still today struggle with pride and moral failings, and I've done things in my youth that I don't even want to consider or think about. But nonetheless, I was able to put my pride aside and just be honest. It was not easy. It's hard. I was shaking and crying, and it was not an easy thing for me to do, even today after all my experience with being honest. But I find that its true freedom is not holding back and being willing to look life in the eye and be honest with God and to ask God for help. And I think if I'm not fully honest, I won't benefit fully from what the church is offering me. Nothing is easy about the last few years of my life when it comes to my wife Victoria's illness and the way in which we've been challenged with healthcare emergencies and crises 24/7. To paint a little bit of a picture for you, imagine a woman in a pitch black room 24/7 who can't tolerate noise because it's neurologically painful, can't tolerate sound because it's neurologically painful, and not only is it painful, it causes mitochondrial dysfunction, which is to say that it inhibits the ability of her cells to make energy. Imagine she's not eating and is not drinking enough fluids, and she's slowly dying. Such was the picture of our lives in 2022 and 2023. where I was a 24/7 caregiver most of the time, and she was slowly slipping out of my hands. Fortunately, she's slowly making progress now, and she's no longer dying, and she's finding a grip on life again. But she's still bedbound, and we still face challenges. But during those worst days, things were so hard and heavy that we could hardly do anything but survive one moment at a time. And since then, I've had caregivers come and go and help us out, and then they leave, and sometimes I can find help and sometimes I can't. In essence, my life is not up to me most of the time. And you could argue nobody's life is. We're all subject to what happens around us, and that we have to respond to what happens. But nonetheless, in a very much more intensified way than I was used to in my 20s, now in my 30s, my life truly has been subjected to this illness. Now, I had relied on my past spiritual experiences, which started with those 12-step programs and finding God in that way. But I found that through this process, it wasn't enough. And Christ was revealed to me as my only way to survive and to truly maintain contact with well-being in this situation. You see, I believe that when life gets at its worst, when we are pressed upon at all sides and there is no escape, that only the most true thing will help us endure. And I believe the most true is God, the Logos. And I didn't know fully that Christ was God until it was revealed to me through this process of going through caregiver crisis and being sleep deprived and constantly having to put things aside in order to take care of my wife, and actually having physical issues myself due to caregiving, which if you're a caregiver, you will know that it does come with its own set of health issues if you do it 24/7 in an intense care setting where you're running infusions and helping with total health care needs for a patient who isn't able to function. You will understand what I'm saying when you don't get relief or respite to the extent that you need it. But nonetheless, Christ has brought me through this, and I'm still standing. There were times when I didn't think I was going to make it. There were times when I thought I myself might just have to die. And I don't mean to be dramatic, but it really does get to the point where it feels like you can't do it anymore. And still I have my days, but I'm renewed by the transforming of my mind, as St. Paul says, in Christ, and I am able to do this in Christ, so that when I do have those hard days or hard moments, I have an intercessor that I can turn to. And now that I'm coming into his church, I'm all the more confident in his ability to carry me when I can't carry myself. But none of this has been easy, and I wouldn't recommend it or prescribe it. But I will say that even though things haven't been easy and things didn't go the way we wanted them to so far in this process of being in our early 30s as a married couple, we are in love and we care for each other deeply, and Christ is making me whole in ways that I could have never imagined. So if you're someone out there who's going through hard times and struggling to breathe and feels like you're suffocating, I know exactly how that feels. I still sometimes feel like I'm suffocating, but when I touch Christ, breath returns to my lungs, and I'm reminded that I've been given a free will choice to turn towards him at any given moment. And I know that he's faithful. And it's confusing to come into a new faith while my life is already turned upside down. So many different shifts are happening at once that the earth is moving under my feet, like tectonic plates violently shifting. But I find that I don't have to know all the answers. It doesn't always make sense in my mind how this is happening, what does it mean, and what matters most is the experience of my heart that I've had of Christ. That is what's convinced me of Christ. I didn't think my way to Christ. I love my way to Christ. And that truly has been my saving grace in this situation. But every day is a new challenge. And I'm often reminded that moments of grace are gifts from God. And yet life goes on, and I will be challenged again, possibly in the next moment or the one after that. And if I remain faithful and remember when I'm walking in that valley and I don't feel that same grace in that moment, that He is there with me and that I can get through this, and that His love is all that I need. So God bless you all, and thank you for tuning in to my YouTube channel, and stick around if you want to see more.